Now, unfortunately, firings are an annual part of the WWE's business strategy. WWE has a habit of releasing talent who they're no longer using, as it doesn't make business sense to keep them employed with the company. However, from time to time, WWE releases a superstar which truly shocks fans to the core, and this superstar is usually a top superstar in the company, and there are usually some wider reasons for their release which go beyond budget cuts. But which wrestlers were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 shocking WWE firings that nobody saw coming. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 10. Karrion Cross. When it was revealed that NXT champion Karrion Cross was getting called up to the main roster, there was a lot of excitement. Cross was the top star in NXT, and along with his manager Scarlett, the two had created one of the most interesting characters on the entire NXT brand. It was clear from Cross's first night on the main roster that WWE chairman Vince McMahon didn't get the appeal of Cross. Cross's presentation would be drastically altered, and he would no longer be accompanied to the ring by Scarlett. Cross also lost his first match on the main roster to Jeff Hardy, making fans question why Vince called him up if he clearly wasn't a fan. Over the next few months, Cross's presentation and booking got considerably worse, and fan reception began to change as Cross wasn't getting the reaction from the crowd he deserved. In November of 2021, Cross along with Scarlett would be shockingly released from the company. Number 9. Nia Jax. But when WWE decided to release more superstars than ever before in 2020 and 2021, fans assumed that Nia Jax would be one of the superstars safe from being fired. Nia was a relative of The Rock and Roman Reigns, and it seemed unlikely that WWE would want to upset either of these two big names. But this wasn't the case, as in November of 2021, Nia Jax was released from the company. Nia had a constant presence in the women's division, and she was always involved in a storyline on the show. Although fans weren't the biggest fan of Nia's work, mainly because they felt she was unsafe in the ring, WWE clearly liked her work, which would explain why she won the Raw Women's title in 2018. It was revealed after Nia's release that she was actually taking time away from the WWE as she was struggling with mental health issues. Fans were shocked when they learned of this, as they felt that WWE's decision was very low. Number 8. Samoa Joe. WWE faced a lot of backlash when they released Samoa Joe in April of 2021. Joe was one of the most talented wrestlers they had on the roster, and he had just recently transitioned into a commentary role on Raw. This was a role which Joe received widespread praise for, as it was a natural fit on the commentary desk. Joe's release was disappointing, as there appeared to be no justification for his release, and the backlash was so severe that WWE were actually forced to rehire him. Joe had become part of the NXT brand in the summer of 2021, and he actually ended up winning the NXT title for the third time in his career. According to Joe himself, it was Triple H who instigated Joe coming back into the company, as it was clear that Triple H wasn't pleased with Joe's untimely firing. Number 7. Aleister Black. On the May 21st, 2021 edition of SmackDown, Aleister Black made his highly anticipated return to WWE programming. Black returned as a heel to take out Big E, and it looked like the two former NXT champions were going to embark on a brand new rivalry. Black had worked endlessly on a new character, and it was finally going to be shown to the audience in the weeks and months to come. However, on June 2nd, Black was shockingly released from his WWE contract. According to him, the reason for his release was down to budget cuts, and he hadn't done anything wrong to upset management. Black insisted that he had a great relationship with Vince McMahon, which made fans question why WWE would release someone who just returned to television. It made no logical sense. Number 6. Keith Lee. Keith Lee's run on the main roster started extremely well. He would secure a clean victory over the legendary Randy Orton at the Payback pay-per-view, and it looked like WWE had plans to make Lee a future main event star. Sadly, this push would be derailed after health concerns pulled Lee from WWE television. When he returned, most of the fire that Lee had had during the start of his main roster run had been distinguished. Lee would also undergo a gimmick change which saw him turn into Bearcat Lee. In November of 2021, Lee would be released from the WWE, and fans were disappointed that WWE hadn't capitalized on the popularity of Lee, as at one stage it looked like Lee was going to be the future world champion, but sadly it wasn't to be. Number 5. Braun Strowman. The WWE always seemed to see Braun Strowman as an absolute megastar. He would have a number of notable rivalries with the likes of Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, and he would even win the WWE Universal title at WrestleMania 36, defeating Goldberg. Braun's release in June 2021 came as a massive shock. because just leading up to Braun's release, he was still being booked incredibly strong. In fact, he had just come off a major WrestleMania storyline with Shane McMahon, and just a few weeks before his firing, Braun featured in a WWE title match at the WrestleMania Backlash pay-per-view. It was said that Braun's firing came down to budget cuts, as Braun had one of the biggest contracts on the entire roster. And notwithstanding this reason, Braun getting released showed fans as well as the rest of the WWE locker room that nobody is safe from being fired. Number 4. Jeff Hardy. Considered by many to be one of the most popular WWE superstars of all time, Jeff Hardy hit headlines in December 2021 after it was revealed that he walked out during a WWE house show match. Fans were deeply concerned with Jeff's welfare, as Jeff had notably struggled with his personal demons in the past, and there was worry that Jeff was in a dark place yet again. Just a few days after the incident at the house show, WWE officially announced that Jeff had been released from his WWE contract. It turned out that Jeff had turned down WWE's offer to send him to rehab, and this left WWE with no choice but to fire him. This left a lot of fans disappointed, as Jeff looked set for one final major push before his retirement. It appeared as if WWE were building towards a dream match between Jeff and Roman Reigns, but with Jeff's firing, this was no longer gonna happen. Number 3. Daniel Bryan. The debut of one of the Nexus stable in 2010 was highly memorable, as it saw the rookies of the inaugural season of NXT invade Raw and destroy everyone in sight. The angle certainly pushed the boundaries on what WWE could get away with under PG restrictions, and unfortunately, certain sponsors weren't happy with the actions of Nexus member Daniel Bryan. During the infamous segment, Bryan began to choke ring announcer Justin Roberts with his own tie, and this was seen as too violent. Although Bryan hadn't done anything wrong, he was just following orders from WWE management, but WWE had no choice but to fire Bryan in order to satisfy their sponsors. Once the backlash from the sponsors had died down, WWE decided to bring Bryan back for the SummerSlam pay-per-view in 2010. Over the next 11 years, Bryan will become one of the biggest stars in WWE history, having won multiple world titles and main eventing multiple WrestleManias. Number 2. Mr. Kennedy. WWE had high hopes for Mr. Kennedy. He was incredibly charismatic and he fit perfectly with WWE's image at the time. But sadly for Kennedy, there was a certain superstar who didn't seem to like him, and in 2009 his WWE career would come to an abrupt end. Kennedy had just returned from an injury in May in 2009, and Kennedy would wrestle in a huge 10-man tag on Raw. During the match, Kennedy would perform a botched backdrop on Randy Orton, which Orton claims resulted in him landing on his head. Orton believed that Kennedy was unsafe in the ring, and following the match, Orton went to Vince McMahon to claim that Kennedy was a huge liability in the ring. It was believed that Orton's claims were supported by John Cena, and Vince had no choice but to take action. Kennedy would be released from his WWE contract, and he would be virtually blacklisted from the entire company, as he hasn't been seen or mentioned on programming ever since. And number 1. Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was a huge merchandise mover for WWE, in particular his Fiend character, which was said to be one of the top merchandise sellers in the entire company. WWE sold anything they could with the Fiend's likeness on, and it's common knowledge that if a superstar is a top merchandise seller, they're virtually untouchable when it comes to being fired. However, in the summer of 2021, Bray was officially released from the company. The decision made no logical sense, and fans are still trying to process without a doubt the most unexpected firing in WWE history. Now, the circumstances surrounding Bray's firing are still unknown, and there are a ton of rumors out there, but only Bray can truly confirm what led to his WWE release. But there you have it, folks, 10 shocking WWE firings nobody saw coming. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.